Great. Welcome again, everybody. It's so nice to have you here. My name is Solène, and I'm the host of the Inclusion Conversation, which is a talk show that aims to break down borders and bring people closer together. My pronouns are she and her, and my visual description is I am a white woman in my mid-30s with long, wavy, light brown hair. And today I'm wearing a black dress, black and white dress, kind of. And in terms of my role, I'm the host here, and I'm also the founder of Beyond Borders, which is a business that does all things speaking, writing, and facilitating of workshops. I'm really, really passionate about diversity and inclusion. And so I try to bring through this conversation different topics to the table. And so tonight we're going to be talking about what it's like to live on the borderline. And this is extra special for me personally because I also was diagnosed a couple of years ago with borderline personality disorder. And this time last year, if you were here already, we had a conversation together with my therapist because I couldn't get anyone to come and talk about this topic, probably because of the stigma, but also because I hadn't found my people yet. I hadn't found this amazing community, which I'm so grateful now that I have found. And so we are going to be joined by different guests tonight, and I can't wait for them to introduce themselves. Before we do that, just a little overview of the flow of the hour. So the first half hour is recorded, and we're going to be talking to Zani, Jay, Mel, and Sophie about what it's like to live on the borderline. The second half hour is not recorded. That's usually my favorite part. For those watching the recording, Suz, you're missing out. For those who are here in person, this is the best part because you get to ask any questions that you have and also share your personal lived experience as well, if you wish to. So without further ado, we're going to turn to our guests. So we've got Zani, Sophie, Mel, and Jay joining us. So Zani, you're the founder of the BPD Bunch, and you're the person that allowed for all of us to meet. So would you like to get us started and introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for today. There's so many things that I could say about myself, but just a quick overview. I was originally diagnosed with BPD in 2004, and long road later, I no longer met criteria by 2019. And now most of my time I just spend working on the BPD Bunch, which is, for those of you who don't know about it, it's a talk show featuring a panel of people in functional recovery from BPD, and every week we just talk about what it was like to deal with it and how we manage the symptoms today. So yeah, I do a lot of other creative things on the side, but that's a little overview, I guess.
Yeah, Zani is a person of multiple talents, making wedding dresses and all sorts of amazing things. Sophie, what about you?
So, hi everyone, I'm Sophie and I was diagnosed with BPD in 2018. I recently finished treatment as of last year, yay! At the moment I work in an all-girls school, secondary school for those who are from the US, middle school, and I do pastoral care, which is basically ensuring the physical and emotional welfare of children. And yeah, I like all sorts of things, but like mostly like skating and dancing and things like that. So I'll stop there.
And you've just moved into your new house and are redecorating the entire place.
So yeah, I'm doing DIY at the moment. I laid my own carpet and painted the rooms and everything. Doing all right.
That's amazing. Mel.
I was taking myself off mute. I'm Melanie. I'm from Toronto, Canada. And I was diagnosed about, I say like 8-9 years ago. I don't know the exact year. I'm currently in my master's to become a therapist. I had about a few years ago an epiphany that I was very much only going to help people who also had a diagnosis with BPD. But as we all do, we go through massive amounts of changes. And I say people identify with BPD, it's like every day we have epiphanies at this point. So now my next big epiphany is that I really just want to help people change, because I very much believe in individual healing, in the sense that I don't believe there's one size fits all to any human being. I believe we're all broken in different ways. I don't believe if you open up a door, we're all the same, meaning we all have different complex ways of looking at life. So besides helping people with BPD, I want to help people. So besides my master's, I've gone through many different hurdles of life, and I could talk for hours. And that's the thing that Zanny has to deal with on the show, or she's editing hours of me talking. So I'm not going to do that today.
No, because we're live.
We're live. Oh yeah, we're live. But I was in the music industry for about 15 years and I still make music. But besides music and BPD, my life is finally meeting my husband, which took me lots of trials and tribulations, and I could go on, but I'm Mel and I'm going to stop there. Yeah.
And you do a lot of exercise and fitness as well. I'm always in awe of all of your pictures and videos. So last but not least, Jay.
Hey guys, my name's Jay Kavanagh. Pronouns are he, him. I'm originally from Essex in the UK. I was diagnosed with BPD in January of 2020, so not that long ago. This was after a pretty chaotic period while finishing my master's at the University of Toronto. And I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Calgary researching BPD.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everybody, for introducing yourself. So everyone joining, thank you. And hopefully you can see that we have a lot of different perspectives. So if anything resonates with you particularly, or you want to ask any follow-up questions, please put them into the chat and I'll be happy to relay those to our guests. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the title for the event tonight. I called it Living on the Borderline. And obviously, it means something in my head, but I'm just wondering, Mel, I'm going to come to you. What does it mean to you, living on the borderline?
So as if you guys don't know, everybody doesn't know who Ray is to me, but Ray is the name of my grandmother. And Ray also my grandmother suffered with BPD, which she didn't talk about, and bipolar. And what I always say, I have a quote and I wrote it down so I don't get it incorrect, but I say there's no light for those who don't know darkness. And so for me, when I talk about being on the borderline, I'm constantly on the border of my emotions, but I'm constantly on the border of darkness and light. So with Ray, my grandmother, I also named my dog Ray, and it's my therapy dog. What I always say is to know yourself is to know your light. You need to know darkness. You have to be in the darkest parts of life. And so for everyone, I always say to them, find your ray of light, but it means go to the darkest parts of life. So to me, to have BPD means to find the darkest parts of myself, but that means finding the darkest parts of life, yourself, and to love your BPD. So meaning to be on the borderline of life, it's to mean to love your life, love yourself, love your BPD.
I love that. And I can see, Jay, you put a heart. So is that resonating? Do you want to add anything?
No, I think you put it perfectly.
Does anyone, Sophie, Zanny, do you want to add anything, any different perspective on living on the borderline?
That was awesome.
That was really awesome.
Great.
Your ray of light. Yeah, I love that. Everyone's going to be wondering what your dog looks like now. So in the chat later, when we all start talking, and probably you're going to have to put a picture. So now we're going to talk a bit about concrete life examples. So could you give us an example of how your BPD, either now or in the past, may have influenced your life day to day? So Zanny, we're going to come to you. Any example?
Oh yeah, so I used to be really, really explosive, and now I'm not so much externally explosive, but I will still really struggle with black or white thinking. And I had a recent time where somebody said to me, could you be a little bit more mindful of your volume when you are surprised or afraid? Because I can be pretty loud. And as somebody who's also sensitive to noises, like I would have thought that my reaction would be like, oh, sucks a little bit, but I understand. But instead, I really felt like I was being told, like, if you don't do it exactly the right way, then that's a problem. And I, like, internally threw a little fit. I was like, if I can't do this exactly the way that I feel like I should in the moment, then I'm just going to hold it all in till I explode, and that'll show them. You know, and that's what I was thinking to myself. And I'm at a point now in my recovery where I was like watching that in my mind, thinking, "Ooh, girl, that's kind of an intense reaction." So it took me a little bit of time to kind of get back to the point where I could be like, I could believe that there should be a balance there. And it's interesting, I guess, because I keep thinking that I get to a point where I just won't have that anymore. And that's not really how it works. And so whenever I have that sort of black or white thinking where I jump to an extreme, I'm a little bit like, whew, okay, yep, still got that in there.
Yeah, I think you say that beautifully throughout the BPD bunch is that BPD is not completely different to a human experience. It's just an intense version of a lot of common traits and experiences that we all have. So it's having that ability to notice those things is really key. And that I didn't used to have that either, you know, like I used to be my emotions like, well, I am anger, like I am, what do you mean I am angry? No, you don't get it. I am anger right now. I just want to literally destroy the entire universe around me. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, so as Zanny was talking, I was kind of thinking about trying to find an example that might sort of lend itself to both a negative response and a positive response in a way. Because sometimes I feel like when we talk about BPD, we can often forget the things that it offers and makes possible for us, as well as the things that it can take away or make difficult, right? And I thought of this example recently where I got elected to this role leading my department's caucus for graduate students. And as part of like the transition into that role, I kind of like developed a presentation that I gave to my team, and it was kind of talking about, you know, what are the goals for the year, what are my leadership qualities, what are the things I need to be better at, all of this stuff, more or less pitching myself to them. And throughout that entire process, I was like feeling so nervous that like people were judging me and were thinking like, oh, this is so excessive, or it's just too much, or whatever. I literally judged every single like movement or comment, or like people needing to leave early, which they had already told me they needed to do, but in my head I catastrophized all of that. And that's something that, you know, for me, BPD does in terms of the negative. It makes it really hard for me to get outside of my own head and look at people's responses and kind of see them for just what they are, instead of, you know, looking for something in them. And that's something that I struggle with in several areas of life. And I feel like from the people with BPD that I know and have spoken to, it seems to be a common kind of shared experience. But on the positive side, I feel like it is also BPD that gives me that capacity to care that much about the role, right? Like there are serious issues that people in my department are facing, like international students are facing massive funding cuts from the provincial government here. Like literally going from like $100,000 that my department was getting per year for this scholarship down to like 20. It's, you know, in 1 year. And I feel like it, you know, BPD gives me that capacity in a way to see that and to take that and kind of have that sense of like fighting for justice in a way. So I feel like that was kind of an example that might lend it to both the negative and the positive side of things.
Yeah, I love that you brought both sides of the coin, because we do tend to focus, especially when you look at the criteria and the kind of medical model approach. We do tend to focus on the challenges, and so it's really good to bring to light also some of those, the loyalty, the sense of justice, the empathy, the commitment, and yeah, that was a really brilliant example. I saw, Mel, that I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I think that's really, Jay touched on so many, it wasn't even negative, I think, and Zanny, I think it's really important because regardless of the symptoms, what happens sometimes when we have a moment or a bad day or a bad hour with BPD, or sometimes not even with BPD in general, but especially with BPD, because our emotions can get so heightened, or even in a split second. And a great example for me, just I have days where I'm just on my couch, even 8 years later, regardless, I don't care. It's been 8 years in recovery, and my husband will come up to me and I go straight back to the beginning of recovery. And I was talking about this weekend on a conversation cafe for Emotions Matter. And I'm going, right to that catastrophic thought that I'm right at the beginning of my recovery. And we're not, we're not. Just like recovery is not linear, we're not back at the effing beginning. Just because we're having a bad hour as humans, it's just a bad hour. We're allowed to go to that couch. We're allowed to have a bad hour, and we're allowed to allow ourselves that bad hour. And we're not reminding ourselves of that, especially with BPD, because we're beating ourselves up because the emotions won't stop. And we're not doing that. And so that bad hour, I say to my husband, and he goes, no, recovery is not linear. It's all over the map. And without that reminder and these groups and people showing up, this is so hard. And it's really, really important for reminding. And so Jay's example is perfect, because whether someone's leaving that meeting when he's talking, it's really hard, and so he needs to be reminded that we're allowed that moment where we feel sad and we feel our self-esteem go down. And I'm on that couch, and still, after years of doing recovery, I'm at the beginning, and and my husband goes, honey, you're not at the beginning. You're just not at the beginning. And I'm going, but I'm so sad, and I'm at the beginning and everything sucks. And it's just a moment. It's just an hour. It's just a bad day, So
Yeah, and more than ever, we have skills and community. I think that's what made the biggest difference for me. Like before, that was the two things that I think I was drastically missing. I don't know if you've come across this image, and if you haven't, do feel free to Google it and check it out. It's by Liz and Molly, and it basically shows this round circle, and it's all messy, and it's like what progress feels like. And then you actually take it from this perspective to this perspective, and you can see that the circle is slowly like going up like this, and it's so brilliant. It's like what it feels like and what it actually looks like. And I often think about that when I have that moment that Mel described, where I'm like, ooh, maybe I just can't see it because I'm looking at it like this, but if I might just be a tiny bit over that next bend, and you never know, keep going. And also allowing, it's the dialectic again, right? And also allowing to feel like shit sometimes and not judge it and be like, this is a day that, and I did swear, and I do apologize for anyone that I offended, but excuse my French, I get to say that. It's brilliant. Sophie, we haven't heard from you in a bit. Did you want to come in on that?
No, I'm just listening, observing, and enjoying, because yeah, it just gives me more hope every time, like just hearing it reiterated that we're allowed to struggle. We are humans, and we are living the human experience, and it's going to be varied. Not every day is going to be the same. And you're not at the beginning of your recovery ever. Like, you just keep going up, right?
Up and down and around.
Yeah, round and around, right?
Zanny, you've come off mute.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I was looking at my notes and thinking that we're kind of on the topic of what my significant aha moment in recovery. So I just thought I would just jump and mention really fast that I think this makes me realize my big aha moment was realizing that being emotionally sensitive is not the disorder. Right? Like, I'm not gonna recovery doesn't mean I become like everyone else. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be okay. And I think that was a big that was the big aha moment for me, because I spent so much time trying to be like this version of what I thought a perfect normal person was. And then I realized, oh no, I mean, it's okay to have emotions and to feel things. That's not the disordered part. And making that separation was just really important.
Yeah, definitely. A big aha moment for me was learning about emotions and the fact that they all have a function, and none of the emotions are actually negative or positive. They are emotions, and they're here to impart a message to you. For example, anger is like flagging that something is happening that is going, against your values. Or like sadness, you need to grieve something, someone, or it could be a job, could be a situation, could be anything. Or anxiety is here to warn you that there's something that feels dangerous, that feels scary, that you might feel like you're not ready to cope with. So like understanding that for me was like, I don't need to suppress them, put them under the carpet, ignore them for the end of times. Like they do come with messages and a purpose. They're trying to tell me something. How do I kind of integrate that into the behaviors that follow? So what about any other aha moments that you want to share, Sophie?
Okay, so a big aha moment for me was that I tend to overestimate the problems and challenges that come along with life, but also like underestimate my ability to cope with them. So like, just, life is going to throw you curveballs, like always, all the time. And you just have to decorate your bat, pick it off the ground, and get ready for that curveball when it comes around the corner, right? So
I love that. You always come up with like the best analogies, honestly. I love it.
So yeah, I've just like, enshrined my, like, put like all these bedazzled my bat, and I just pick it up and I'm like, you know what, I'm ready to go again. And again, like going back to what Melanie said about just, sometimes you're okay to just lie down and take a moment and not feel like, oh, life catastrophize everything. It doesn't need to be that. Like, just allow yourself to have that moment and get back up and be like, okay, right, I'm ready to swing. Let's go. So that's been the biggest aha moment for struggling for so long, where, for example, like I couldn't like hold down jobs, or like, like little things would happen, like with BPD, people tend to kind of move on with jobs or get bored or whatever. Like I would just overestimate my ability to cope when something will come along. And now being in this new position, because I got my job not too long ago, just realizing that actually things will go wrong in the job, and I'm dealing with little people's emotions, like they're 12 or 11 to about 17, and that's when your amygdala is really like hijacking the show. And so like having to guide those children and say to them, look, things happen sometimes. Can we just breathe? Can we do a jigsaw puzzle? Can we like make some goals? That kind of like, reinforces my own learning.
I was going to say, this is beautiful, because basically it's like a mirror also for you to be like, hey, practice mindfulness, practice distracting yourself, practice
what you preach.
Yeah, I mean? Exactly. It's like you're teaching it, preaching it, practicing it all at the same time. That's really brilliant. Mel.
You know what my therapist said to me this week, and it was like honestly revolutionary for me. I don't know who's going to pick this one up. So, because Sophie said something and I was like, yes, life is going to constantly throw a million things at you. And with us, with BPD, I don't know in the audience who has lived experience, but it doesn't even matter. Every week, you're going to have a pile of a list this big, and you're going to keep kids, divorce, life, diseases, all these things are just going to keep coming. And I started getting so frustrated because I was like, it just doesn't end. It never ends. And I started getting so overwhelmed. Even when I'm starting to be a therapist, I go, well, do I need training in this? And am I going to need to know that? And I started forgetting the most important thing. If a client comes to you or a therapist, they're coming to you for one specific reason. And it's the same reason that anybody goes to anything for anything. They go to you for your heart. They go to you for your experience, but they go to you because they trust you and your heart. And it's the same reason with anything in life. You have to start listening to your heart and start tapping in and going still and going to your heart and really keeping it simple in life. We start overwhelming life and getting so complicated. It's not about all of the skills and the kids and the stress and all that. If you go really slowly and get patient with yourself and start really like getting calm and want to go on that couch for an hour. And he said to me, he goes, really, at the end of the day, you can have all the knowledge in the world, all the training in the world, listen and look at all the people yelling at you and all the noise. The noise is never going to get to the peace in your heart that keeps talking to you. And so when I started listening to my heart, right, because we all have that heart centering side of us. Really, we all do. We don't believe in ourselves all the time. But if we really do just listen and get still with ourselves, something is talking to you, whether you're spiritual or not, God, not all that, it starts talking to you. And for some minute there, when he was talking to me, I go, oh, and my therapist looks like Mr. Rogers. God bless him. He's the cutest man. But I went, oh, okay, it is. All that is additions. Everything that we complicate our life with is additions. And, BPD, no BPD, we're all just complicating ourselves in this mess of life. And so I went, okay, and I got still. And so it's here, and that's kind of the rhythm of life, So I don't know who can relate to that. But
yeah. A lot of people can relate to that in the
Yeah.
chat. And I think bringing it back to that breath and that heartbeats is a really important message. Zani, you wanted to come in.
I was just going to say that I really relate to that. I spend a lot of energy being, really trying to figure out the whys, because I get so convinced that if I understand why something became to be this way, then somehow that will solve all the problems just by itself, right? And the thing is, every time, even when I have those answers, it doesn't change the situation, right? And so being able to just be, I think, is one of the biggest lifelong practices. Is, I think Solen has said this before, we're human beings, not human doings. And that really has stuck with me, to be okay with just being and not worrying so much about how you feel. Like, if you don't feel great, that's okay. That whole concept that I judge myself so harshly, because it's like, if I'm not feeling good, it's like, what's wrong with me? What's your problem? And I feel like if you're chasing happiness all the time or feeling good, that's just not a very robust way to live, because then it's like life doesn't have any meaning if you don't feel good, and life still has meaning even when you don't feel good. And so, yeah, that's just what you made me think of, and I just second that.
Yeah, and it circles back to also what Mel was saying with the darkness and the light. So like, we won't know if we're feeling good if we never don't feel good. Like, what does that even then mean without the kind of the different states that we can experience?
And that's so good, Zanny, because this addiction to reasoning, questioning everything constantly, that's not going into the darkness. That's not unfolding and letting life unfold. And this addiction to reasoning, this why me? Why this? Why am I making the right choice? Is this the right decision? This paranoia. We suffer with paranoia with BPD. Is this right? Is this person like me? Do I like me? Did I make the right decision? This, that. Oh, if we get still and we go here, it doesn't matter. The why doesn't matter as much as the loving your heart, and if it feels okay at this moment. And that's the flow. And I realized I question everything. And Albert Einstein said the most brilliant people question everything, the most creative minds. So never look at your questioning as it's stupid. Look at your questioning as it's brilliant. You know, I wish someone said that. You asked us, Solène, what do you wish someone told you with your BPD? I wish someone told me my BPD was beautiful, that I question everything, but still know that your heart is beautiful and it's in a good place, you know?
Yeah, I wish that too. I wish someone told me that, you know, emotions are all acceptable and that, you know, you can express yourself in any way that feels right to you and, you know, all these different things. We're going so quickly. This could be hours and hours. I just want to come around to each of you and ask you kind of one thing that makes your life worth living. Could be something small at the moment, could be something big, overarching, just something that makes your life worth living. And after that, we'll stop the recording and then we'll turn to our audience. I already saw that we have some questions in the chat, so I can't wait to get to that. But first of all, Jay, we're going to start with you. What's something that makes your life worth living?
I mean, I think just by virtue of it being my life, it's worth living is the first thing to say. But, you know, in addition to like the obvious things like friendships, family, those kinds of things, and the role that I have in supporting those people that are really important in my life and living alongside them, I really think I derive a lot of significance and meaning in my life from the work that I do. BPD is like so understudied outside of like clinical literature. A lot of lived experience voices are not included in the work that I often have to read. And, you know, I think it's really important for somebody like me with lived experience to be kind of doing the work that I'm doing, and because academia can be really exhausting and a really harsh and stigmatizing space. I've often said that most of the stigma that I've experienced has come from that space and not clinical environments, which is what we often hear a lot of, and there are certainly a lot of those experiences in clinical settings. But yeah, I derive a lot of meaning from the work that I do and fighting that fight.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. What about you, Sophie?
What makes life worth living? I would say that, first of all, learning and self-discovery makes life worth living. You know, to think that a few years ago I could have not been here and then I would have missed out on like where I'm at now. And it's so gorgeous to see it. Like, I just, yeah, not knowing that like I could ever see this person, you know, like there's a meme that says like, if you could see yourself now, like it's something like that anyway, like if you're struggling or whatever, like what if you could see yourself now? Like, and I'm just mind blown sometimes. That definitely my daughter, watching her grow, again, same sort of thing, just seeing her change as a person all the time and develop her ideas and her identity. She's always changing because she's like 11. So my family, my friends, and the work that I do, the girls I work with are just awesome. You know, they come from like a lot of like broken homes and they don't see themselves as worthwhile. And I know what it's like to feel that way, like not worth anything or like just empty. And if I had a me growing up, you know, that I wonder where I'd be now. I'm happy. I'm grateful for where I am because I worked hard to get here. But if I just had someone like me in my corner growing up, you know, someone who's invested in knowing me for who I am, interested in my day, what I'm allergic to, and like coming to meetings with like a teacher where I'm underachieving or something, like I just, yeah, I love the work I do. And, you know, healing them is ultimately healing myself. So that's what makes life worth living.
That's beautiful. And by healing yourself is also how you can heal them. It's a self-fulfilling cycle. It's beautiful. Mel and Zani, we're a couple of minutes, a very short snippet. What makes your life worth living, Zani?
I'll just say all the things that have already been said and the BPD bunch. There was a time when I thought that I would never know anyone else who could relate to me. And now I have so many people in my contacts list that I like I have I have a list. Like, how crazy is that? I have a list of people I could call who get it. That's amazing.
You did that.
You did. You made it happen. Mel, what about you?
I think having hopes and dreams. When I was a little girl, I used to just sit at the end of my bed and think that I could just have them and they wouldn't come true. And I still get really, really sad some days that those are just hopes and dreams and they should just be realistic. But I think what keeps me going every day is that hopes and dreams can still come true. You know?
I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't know in the audience if, you know, people have lived experience for the most part, or maybe relatives or loved ones with lived experience. And sometimes it is really hard to remember what makes life worth living. And that's why I really wanted to finish on this question, to give everyone, you know, that hope and those messages and maybe those things that you can reflect on your own life and what makes your life worth living for you, because it can be very personal. And I saw that in the chat several people were sharing, and that was really, really nice to see. So thank you so much for that. We are coming to the end of the recorded part. We're going to move on to the questions very soon, and thank you for the questions that have been coming in already. I'm just going to be sharing for those watching the recording before we stop that question. So for anyone watching the recording, thank you so much. Please join our next episode live so you can ask your questions. We're on Eventbrite, and you can also follow at Be Beyond Borders on Instagram and head to the Be Beyond Borders website. There's tons of episodes to rewatch on the Be Beyond Borders channel, and actually there's the one from last year around borderline, which defines a lot around you know, BPD, what is BPD, etc. So if you wanted to revisit that, that might be relevant. And then finally, hopefully see all of you for episode 18, which is going to be about sensory communication. How do we communicate with each other without language? And specifically when it comes to people with severe disabilities. So this should be really, really interesting and very different topic. So that's it for the recording, and hopefully see other people in the next one.